Hi again then guys, and welcome once again to the world of Test Drive Unlimited 2 for one of my favourite cars in the game, one of the cars which takes a little bit longer than some others to attain, not because you have to win a race or a championship or get an insane amount of money, but more so because you just have to find it, because this is one of the barn find cars. And some of these are interesting to own, like the Beetle or the Citroen 2CV, which we'll also discuss in this same series, but this one is by far my favourite of all of the barn finds because it's such a usable car in terms of actual performance. Now, funnily enough, for racing, it's actually not that usable, which is disappointing, and I would say that that is actually the only disappointment about the Buggy V8, because it's so good. It's a B2 class vehicle that, if I remember correctly, I don't think you can actually use this in any form of off-road event. I think it's actually too high to be allowed in, which is a shame. But maybe I'm wrong, but I seem to recall that being the case. So what do you actually get if you haven't unlocked the car? Well, it's got a 5-litre V8 engine, which is pretty sweet. It's a 375 horsepower engine, which doesn't sound as impressive, but still, for a buggy, that's pretty good. And incidentally, this is not a small car. As you could see at the start of the video, it's a pretty hefty sized vehicle. Now, that engine can be tuned up from 375 horsepower with a level 3 tune at least, which is what I'm running, to just under 400. Then you can take the torque as well up to about 376 pound-feet. Now, for a, let's call it a hobby buggy, it's not a full competition machine, it's more like a garden shed kind of buggy, if you want to look at it that way. Those are pretty good numbers to be working with. Not necessarily as powerful as you might hope. You'd probably hope for something like 500 or 600 horsepower, so not quite. But the great thing about it is what it can do with that power and torque. It's not that lightweight. It weighs 1,212 kilos, which is okay. It's not awful, but it's okay. And at the end of the day, it is a big car, as I said, so it's not too surprising. But the performance is fantastic on this thing. It does 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds. Top end speed is okay. That's not really why you buy a car like this. But the great thing about it is the handling on this buggy is so different to any of the other off-road SUVs and trucks, because of course it's an entirely different kind of vehicle. It's technically allowed in the same kind of category, albeit a higher version of the category, B2, but it has nothing at all in common with any of the other cars. You put something like an Audi Q7 V12 TDI up against a Spiker D8, up against a Range Rover, up against a Mercedes, whatever, they're all fairly similar. They're on a level playing field with some that are just that bit better than others. So, I mean, it's not a level playing field, but you know what I mean. They're the same kind of car, different variations of the similar idea, the same concept. SUVs, in effect. This is nothing like that. It's a totally different vehicle, and I would say it's actually a lot more fun. As much as I love the Spiker D8, which is my favourite SUV in the game, this one is entirely different, as I said. Now, the handling is fairly heavy, and off-road you can lose grip sometimes when you might not expect to, because it doesn't really handle its power, more specifically than cornering. It doesn't really handle the power and torque in the same way that something like a normal SUV would, whereas uphill they'll get really slow, but they'll make it up there eventually. With this, that's not really the case. On some hilly sections, you can start to slide back down again, which is perhaps disappointing or surprising, but the great thing about the buggy to overcome that is that you can often gain a lot more speed going into a hill or a mountain, depending on how big the hill is, than you could in an SUV. Because many of the SUVs are not designed to do what we do with them in the game. They are designed to be off-roaders, but there's no SUV on the public market really that's designed to go off-road at 120, 130 miles per hour. They can do it, potentially, but it's not exactly recommended. Whereas with a buggy, it could do that all day. So you can take on these hilly sections no problem at all. You can basically go up a mountain at full speed. You'll lose some speed, of course, but the momentum behind this thing, it's a force to be reckoned with, and it's so much fun to drive. It feels like the car's got a personality of its own, if you can even call it a car. Technically not. But if you do get the chance to unlock it, which basically just means finding the barn finds, it's definitely worth doing so, because although some of the other barn finds are pretty cool as well, some of them for sure, I even like the Citroen 2CV in its own weird little kind of way, but this one is one of the most unique cars in the game, and to cap off the review, I would say that this car is my go-to, by far, my go-to vehicle for exploring, because it's brilliant for that. You feel in this thing that due to the ground clearance, the stability, the amount of weight which it does have, the off-road performance, combined with really good handling on-road, which most SUVs don't have, not to this level at least, it just makes it such a good all-round expedition vehicle. You can go pretty much anywhere on the map with it. So if you do get the chance to work towards it, definitely do so. You'll have a whole lot of fun, and as you can see, you can also paint it as well. But that's it for this pick. Of course, I'll see you guys again next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.